He's a member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
The president
Good
called,
to be with you.
Thank you. The president called it, in his words, a fact. He used the word fact that President Obama was tapping his phones. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly just told me President Trump has got his reasons to say it. He's got some convincing evidence that took place. He's got to believe that. I want you to react to that. Do you believe the president does have some convincing evidence to make such a shocking allegation against President Obama?
He does not, but he lives in an alternate fact world. Consider that he spent 4 years going after the birther thing, and then there are 3 million votes out there that were illegal. Another alternate fact, Ted Cruz's father somehow involved in the assassination of JFK. This man has more alternate facts about what's going on in the world than any other person I've ever heard of, and it is extremely dangerous because the world cannot count on him. They cannot count on what he might do next. It is very, very troublesome, particularly in the complex, very dangerous world we have. You've got a crazy guy in North Korea. How is the president going to respond? At 3 o'clock in the morning, what's he going to do? Tweet out or do something even more serious? I am very, very concerned about what this guy, what the president is all about.
You heard our Justice correspondent Pamela Brown just report that the FBI Director James Comey was incredulous after the president tweeted those comments, those assertions about President Obama early Saturday morning. What do you make of the fact that from everything we've heard, the President Trump, has not even spoken to the FBI Director James Comey about this?
Well, it is another very serious concern that I have, and I suspect many other people have, about the way he operates as president. Listening to Breitbart News and then assuming that that's a factual rendition of what's going on and not even bothering to talk to his intelligence agencies, his FBI, before he starts a huge controversy that really only embroils him. Doesn't embroil anybody else. It is a very, very serious problem. We've got a serious situation around the world that requires a serious president focusing on the serious issues that confront us here in the United States as well as around the world.
Would you like to see the FBI Director comment on this?
Well, of course, and I think he probably will, particularly if the Justice Department, Mr. Sessions, continues to basically block the information that Comey believes is factual, that there was no FBI involvement in any wiretapping at all. And I suspect that Comey will not stand quietly and have his view of what the FBI has done and the entire dignity of the FBI called into question if Sessions continues to block the appropriate information.
As you know, the President of the United States can fire an FBI director. Do you think he could go that far and actually fire Comey?
Well, we've seen this play before, haven't we? This is exactly what happened during Nixon-Watergate period. I think we went through 3 FBI directors before somebody was found that would kowtow to President Nixon. So yes, sure, he can fire him, and then who's he going to put in? And it goes on and on from there. We don't need this in America. We've got some really important things we have to deal with. We've got Russia and Putin out there, not just the issue about who was involved in the campaign, who was talking to who, but we do know that Russia's putting extraordinary pressure on the Baltic states, obviously on Ukraine. They've taken over Crimea, and China's out there and North Korea. These are fundamental national security issues, to say nothing of what's going on in the Middle East. And here we are spending 4 or 5 days, maybe longer, about one of the president's early morning, 3 o'clock in the morning tweets, where he's on a rant about something that nobody has put forward as factual.
It was 3 a.m. your time out in California. It was about 6 a.m., 6:30 to be precise, here on the East Coast, that first of several tweets Saturday morning. President Trump has asked Congress now, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, to investigate his baseless claim that the former president, President Obama, tapped his phone. He hasn't asked specifically that these committees investigate Russian President Vladimir Putin, yet there's plenty of evidence that Russia did in fact launch cyber attacks, meddled in the U.S. elections. Does this concern you? He wants an investigation of President Obama, but doesn't necessarily want an investigation of President Putin.
Well, this is once again his standard procedure of trying to change the story, change the narrative to something quite different. It is absolutely certain from 17 different intelligence agencies that Russia was engaged not only in hacking and then disseminating that information through WikiLeaks, but also trying to influence the American presidential election. That is extremely serious. That is a direct blow to our democracy and to the very nature of our country. That has to be investigated, and frankly, I don't think it can be done by the Congress. It needs to be an independent commission, perhaps an independent prosecutor, but this has got to get away from politics because we're talking about the very nature of our democracy here. Now, those are facts, and those are things that absolutely have to be investigated, and the facts will take it wherever we need to go. And maybe it will come awfully close to the president. We don't know. But it has to be out there. The public has to have confidence in our election, and we clearly have to know what Putin's up to because he is a very dangerous person. He is known to have killed his opponents in that country. He is now actively engaged in trying to direct the spring elections in Europe, in France, and other places. This is very serious. Now, if the president wants to get engaged, engage in that and put aside this foolishness of this early morning rant that apparently he was on. There are things that we have to pay attention to, not the least of which his effort to take 20 million Americans and remove the security that they have for health insurance.
There's a lot more to discuss. I want you to stand by, Congressman. After months of waiting, we're now learning details of the House Republican bill to replace and to repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to tell you what we're learning right after a quick break. Let's bring back Congressman John Garamendi of California. Congressman, do you welcome these updates, these changes to the original travel ban, now excluding Iraq, exempts current visa holders, green card holders? Do you still see any legal issues with this new revised order?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be legal questions that have been raised. Certainly, those issues that you just spoke to are issues that were in the previous one. They apparently have been removed. But, well, my head just spins. I cannot understand the vetting under this travel ban or any of these visas from every country requires the work of the State Department. And just this last week, the Trump administration put out a 37% decrease in the State Department funding. So I don't get it. On the one hand, you want severe vetting and you want to deal with all of these potential problems, and on the other hand, the people that are supposed to deal with it, you've cut their budget by a third. It is nonsense, and it's just part of the chaos that's coming out of this administration. As to the legality of this, lawyers that are out there, I'm not a lawyer, we'll leave it to them to judge it, but the reality is that there are terrorist organizations from many, many countries around the world, and we need a solid State Department and Homeland Security looking at these issues. We need to have clear communications with all of the countries, not only these six, and it's difficult in the case of some of these six, certainly Yemen and Somalia, there really isn't a government, but in other countries, the European countries, the sharing of information is absolutely critical. And here within the United States, those 300 people, we have no idea who they are, where they came from, but hopefully we're watching them, and that's a good thing.
Congressman Garamendi, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to do so.
Just ahead, we'll have more on the White House defense of the president's wiretap claim against President Obama. Will there be political fallout?